Hi, I'm Emma Fullenwider, the Lifestorian, and you're watching the replay video of the live legacy letter workshop. There were some things that we covered that were fantastic that we didn't get on camera, so I'm going to see you at the end to catch you up on everything and make sure you get the full experience. Enjoy.
Yep, we're recording. Let's get started. Okay, welcome. This is the first legacy letter workshop over Zoom. So this is sort of a warts and all experience for us, and I just want to thank you all for coming, and I'm really excited to help you all. My dad gave me a legacy letter. He didn't know that that's what he was writing, but once I found out what a legacy letter was, I realized that that's really the letter that I got from my dad for Christmas one year, and it changed the direction of my life. It was extremely impactful. So whether you're planning to deliver one for Christmas presents this year or keep it with your estate plan for later, it really is an honor for me to help you accomplish that, knowing how much it affected me. So please, if you have to leave early, please leave some feedback for me in the chat. I am going to ask for feedback afterwards because I want to know how to do this better. That is something that I'm always trying to get better at doing this so that we can help more and more people. So if you could just let me know how I'm doing this wrong, that would be a huge benefit to me. In fact, one of the people in the 11 o'clock already emailed me and told me that I have amends spelled incorrectly on the template. So I will fix that once we're done. Let's see, I'm just going through my checklist here, make sure I don't forget anything. If you have questions, please unmute yourself and feel free to interrupt me because we are sort of on a time limit with Zoom. So I'm going to be moving a little bit at a quick pace here. So if you have any questions, just unmute yourself and interrupt me. That is totally fine. And so before we get into the thick of it, I know that this is a very busy season for everybody. And we all have busy lives and busy brains. And so if we could just take a second and turn our phones off and make sure that anything else, we have someone in the group who's packing to move. We have, a lot of things that are going on in our brains. And I just want to ask that we take just the space of a breath together to close down the other tabs that are open in your brain and be here. If you're going to be here all the way here. Some of us are not all there, but we can all be all here. So we're just going to take a deep breath together real quick. All right, let's get started. A couple of you have the template. Tessa, you waved yours at me. I'm going to call on you to help me read parts of it when it comes to it. So, okay. Most of you know me, but if we haven't been introduced, my name is Emma Fullenwider. I live in West Sacramento with my family, my husband and my 2 kids and our lovely brown dog. And I teach people how to save their stories. I call myself the Lifestorian. It's a word I made up that I love because it just perfectly describes what I do. I help people take the stories that are inside their brain and have a paper copy outside of themselves because our brains are sort of a scary place to store important information. If you do have the template, then please sort of wave it up for me so that I can see that you have it. That is super helpful. Melissa is totally on it. I would expect nothing less. If you don't have it, you should have something to write on and something to write with because we are going to we're going to go through a lot of information today. And also we're going to have if we have some time at the end, and I hope that we do, we're going to have some time to get started on our writing. So, and the template is really helpful reference as you go, because this is going to be a process. I did say we were going to start our legacy letters today. And start is the empirical word there because it is a process. We're not going to finish them today. It's an emotional process. It's a lot of work, but it's very important work. And I applaud all of you to committing to showing up today and doing that very hard work. So is everyone clear on what a legacy letter is? Would anyone like me to take a minute to sort of clarify what a legacy letter is?
Emma, I think if you did, it might spark some imagination when developing the legacy letter.
Okay. So I just saw that we had Kate coming in. Let's wait for Kate for just a second. I am actually going to go over what a legacy letter is because I forgot we're also recording this for other people. They might need to know. So we'll let Kate join here. Hi, Kate. Mom, this is Kate Cook from junior high. And if she shows us her video, you'll see she looks exactly the same. So a legacy letter, Kate, I'm just telling everyone, reminding everyone, sort of going over what a legacy letter is. A legacy letter is also called an ethical will. Lauren, before we started the meeting, was talking a little bit about how it's sort of a supplement to your estate plan. It outlines your material, or an estate plan outlines your material legacy. A legacy letter outlines sort of your immaterial legacy, because there was not everything that we leave behind is tangible. In fact, I think most of what we leave behind is intangible. So a legacy letter is your way of making sure that nothing important remains unsaid. I call it your one phone call from heaven. So if you had one phone call from heaven, who would you call and what would you say to them? And if you want to make sure that whatever it is that you would say doesn't accidentally get left unsaid because it never comes up in conversation, this is the legacy letter is your way of making sure that that gets passed on. Because some of these things are heavy. You know, some of the things that come up are going to be very heavy and very hard to talk about. And so, you know, at what holiday dinner do you say, by the way, have I ever told you? That's just not always the best way to approach things. That's how my dad would do it, but that's proven to not be the best way to handle, you know, really deep, hard things to talk about. Sometimes those things are very scary. And so if you're, it's okay to wait for that to come up, for those opportunities to come up. But if this way, you know that if it never comes up, if you never have an opportunity to say certain things, they will not be left unsaid. So there are 4 categories in the template that you each received. These are the most common themes that people address in their legacy letters. And the purpose of the template is just to help you begin. Where you end up is entirely up to you. Some letters are 2 paragraphs and some are several pages. Just write what's important to you. And remember that, you know, you can all sort of take a moment and look over your shoulder and notice that your English teacher is not there telling you that you're, you know, that you've misplaced a comma. Your great grandmother is not there saying a lady doesn't talk about these things. This is just you, and this is just what's important to you. I like to say the enemy of memoir is the ghost of your English teacher. So we're all trained very heavily in how to edit and not necessarily in how to create. And those are 2 separate processes. So just knowing that creating is going to be hard for you at first because your brain is trained to edit more than it's trained to create. Just knowing that will help you sort of power through and shush your editing brain. So section 1, Melissa, do you want to read, you're going to unmute yourself and read the what are you most proud of section for us on the template?
Sure. What are you most proud of? The section reads, what do you want to be remembered for? What have you done that defines you and gives you the most pride? By discussing the things that have not stood the test of time and remained high on your priorities list, your perspective, the things that have stood the test of time and remained high on your priorities list, your perspective will help the next generation separate what's important from what's fleeting. Emma's pro tip says, studies have shown that resilience is a trait that can be passed on to your family by sharing the hardships and obstacles you have overcome in life. No matter what the future holds for your loved ones, your stories can help them face their own struggles and rise above adversity.
Thanks, Melissa. This is true. We like to sort of make fun of the millennials and Gen Y because they're a little bit annoying, and we call them snowflakes. That lack of resilience, there are reasons for that. There was never, ever a nationwide meeting where they all got together and decided to be that way. and decided that hard things were too hard for them. Resilience, that noticeable lack of resilience in the younger generation, there are some things that have affected them during parts of their development, and that have led to a lack of resilience. And there are lots of them. This is not the only thing, but there are studies on resilience that show that overcoming hardship, stories from our elders can help us overcome hardship when we are fighting something and we're running out of fight in our own lives. I have a few friends who talk about family members. I don't think she's here today, but I do have a friend who talks about does anyone here, let me ask, does anyone here have a family member who comes to mind when they are struggling and they just don't know if they can continue? Yeah, I see lots of nods. I'm extremely lucky to have my great-grandma's memoir. She was raising a toddler. I think it's hard raising a toddler and a newborn during COVID. She was raising a toddler and a newborn during the Dust Bowl. And hearing her stories of what she, waking up one day and the well is just gone because it's under a mountain of dirt that appeared overnight. So reading these stories and seeing how she always kept her sense of humor and her spirit intact, she never lost hope, comes to mind when I'm up against something, and I know, like, this is the stock that I come from. I can get through this because she got through that. That's a very real thing that a lot of the younger generation is missing, and memoirs and legacy letters can reestablish that connection. So you're passing on more than your stories. You are actually passing on, I say it's intangible, but it is almost a tangible strength that you are passing on with the stories.
Real quick, one of the items of feedback that I got, which was a great piece of advice, is to pause between sections. So we've come to the end of section 1. There are 4 sections total. Every time you hear me say next section, just pause real quick and take 1 minute to jot down anything that has come to mind for the section that we just covered. Okay, moving on.
The next section, who else? Tessa, I think you had the template printed out there also. Do you want to read the amends, the incorrectly spelled amends section for us?
Okay, sure. Amends. What do you wish you had done differently in life? Are there reconciliations you've been meaning to make with others? This is your opportunity to clear the air, forgive others, and warn your loved ones about the pitfalls in your life that you hope they avoid.
So one of this year's really prominent memoirs, I'm surprised it hasn't gotten more press, is James Taylor. James Taylor released his memoir this year. And I was reading an interview about his memoir, and he said that his dad was an alcoholic, and when he moved away to New York. His dad called him one day, and his dad could tell by his son's voice that he was on some very heavy drugs. And he drove through the night to go pick him up and drive him home. And on that drive home, he told his son, there's no excuse for my alcoholism, but I've never touched hard drugs because when he was a boy, his uncle had warned him and said, the men in our family cannot handle hard drugs. If you do cocaine one time, your life is over. And I thought, how much rehab could James Taylor have been spared if his dad had remembered to pass on that piece of the family legacy? So although we want to talk about our successes and our accomplishments, the truth is some of the best advice that you can pass on to your loved ones are also your regrets and your failures. And they're like, if you think about a lighthouse doesn't guide people to it. A lighthouse stands where you need to stay away from. It helps people to stay away from the thing that will destroy them. And so there are parts of your legacy letter that are going to be a beacon to draw people to, and there are parts of your legacy letter that are going to be a lighthouse to steer people away from harm. The next section, universal truths for a good life. Mom, do you want to read that? You need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
The clock is running out on your phone call from heaven. In as few words as possible, tell your loved ones everything they need to know to live their life with much joy and few regrets. Maybe you have a proverb to share about how to stay healthy, how to parent, or how to succeed, or how to treat others. This is where you are going to share the things that you know for sure. And that's under Universal Truths for a Good Life.
So Oprah published a book a few years ago called Things I Know for Sure. And I was reading sort of the origin story of that. There was a journalist who asked her in an interview, "What do you know for sure?" And it just blew her mind. She said it was the hardest question she's ever been asked, and it really got her thinking, what do I know for sure? And she wrote, I think, a column. It was either a blog or an actual syndicated column called Things I Know for Sure, because it was it made her think so deeply about, like, what am I absolutely sure of in this life? And so we are completely surrounded by marketing and by media that is written and designed by people who know a lot about psychology, and their job is to make people believe that the key to happiness is having a better vacuum cleaner. The key to happiness is being skinny and also having faster internet. And I mean, at some level, you hear it so many times, you start to sort of believe it. And so your loved ones are getting this too, and it's influencing their view of life. And so the Universal Truths for a Good Life is where you can cut through the noise and say, here's what's real. Here's what's real. The last section, Parting Thoughts, is kind of a free-for-all. I'm just going to read it because it's really short. Finish your letter with reminders of your love, charges to action, and your most heartfelt wishes. This is your letter. Write anything that shouldn't be left unsaid. I've seen letters that were as general as... Sorry, someone's doing yard work out here, so if you can hear that, I apologize. Some letters are as general as, if I have hurt anyone, I forgive them, or if anyone has hurt me, I forgive them. If I have hurt anyone, I ask their forgiveness. Some people are very specific, very specific. I had one client say, she said, I want someone to cherish my eggs. And I kind of went, excuse me, what? And she was in her 90s, and we were in her assisted care apartment, and there were like 4 or 5 china hutches. And when she said that, I was sitting there. We'd been sitting there for like an hour, and I suddenly looked around, and all of the china hutches were full of carved eggs. This is a hobby I did not know existed. They carve them, they bedazzle them, they put little hinges and doors on them. And this was a hobby she had had for 20 or 30 years. And she just said, I want someone to cherish my eggs, and she didn't want them to get rid of her eggs. And that went into her legacy letter. Yes, it did. It absolutely did. She made me one. She made me an egg. It's on my bookshelf after our time together. It's very sweet.
Ba-ba! There it is.
So the second page of the template is, this has to do with printing and archiving. So we've got through the content. Now that you've done all of the hard emotional work of writing your legacy letter, we need to make sure that it gets where it's going. So making sure your letter survives. Use acid-free linen paper. This is not that hard to find. If you look on Amazon, it's pretty easy to find. Make sure you print your legacy letter on a laser printer and not an inkjet printer. I learned this from a master printer. I asked him what kind of ink we should use. He said, actually, the things that survive the most are things that are printed with toner, because toner is a type of plastic, and it ages much better. So make sure that you store your letter in a paper folder or a paper envelope and not a plastic sleeve. Plastic sleeves can adhere to the paper, and then there's no way to separate them without damaging something. And also, if there's humidity there, it can cause mildew. And so just make sure that it's in a paper folder so that it stays good and stays intact. How and when you distribute your letter is completely up to you. But do make sure that you have a plan for how your family will receive it, when they will receive it. Either whether you, Lauren, I don't know if you can actually keep a copy with the estate plan. That's something that I recommend to people.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people to put it in their binder. So, I mean, like, you know, they leave our firm, they have a, you know, a sleeve and a binder and all that stuff to kind of keep everything water safe and, you know, whatever. So yeah, I always tell them that we have a place and we have a section for it to put it in. So I'm always like, put it in here. This is where it goes. This is the tab for it. That's one of the reasons why I get so, this is the tab where you put these things.
It has a place in the binder.
It has a place, yeah.
So yeah, if you have an estate plan, talk to your estate planner about keeping it there. Keep a copy in your safe with your personal documents. Back it up to an external source. I mean, you can modify your legacy letter. I wrote mine before I had my second child, and I modified it after I had my second child. And when when things look scary, it has already brought me peace of mind knowing that my last words to my kids aren't going to be, I'll be back after my haircut, you know? So it is good to know that they are going to get that. Make sure that if something happens to you, this is what I want you to remember. If something happens to you, make sure that your family will either find it, receive it, or already have it. So have a plan for one of those things.
Okay, I'm interrupting again real quick. The next 15 minutes of the video are just Q&A session, which you absolutely should watch because we talk about how to preserve handwritten notes. We talk about adding photos if you want. We talk about getting through writer's block. We talk about setting a deadline for yourself to get this done. We talk about a lot of good stuff, but you know, it's the kind of, it's a little low on content per time, so you can probably listen to it at 1 1/4, 1 1/2 speed and still get the gist of it. But I wanted to point out that below this video, there is a registration button. That is for a class, and it is not a legacy letter class. That is for a guided memoir writing class. So we're going to do this kind of stuff, but we're going to be going more in depth. We're going to be in a small group where you're going to have homework. If you think that you are ready to move on from the legacy letter to writing down some of the stories that have defined your life, please sign up. There are 5 spots available. There is an early bird until January 5th, and I hope to see you in the class.
So has anyone taken the template and started writing their legacy letter yet? Not yet? That's okay. We don't have any overachievers in the group. So we have a few minutes left on our time here, and so I am going to, does anyone have questions?
Emma, I think you answered the questions that I had at the very end, just amending the legacy letter as things change or as you think of things. But one of the things that I think is really charming is a handwritten note. I've saved all of my mom and my grandma's, holiday cards. And I like to look, they're no longer here. And so I really like to look at their handwriting. So if we were to do this and write it out, would you still recommend that we have it? How would you ensure that we can get the original to our recipients if we handwrite it? And then preserve it?
That's a good question. So I don't know a lot about preserving handwritten notes. I know that my dad photocopied his original letter because my dad woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning with a sudden realization that there were things he had never told us that were very important that he told us. And so he grabbed a pad of legal paper and just started writing. And it is kind of precious to have my dad's handwriting in the felt tip pens that he always keeps in his shirt pocket. But it was a photocopy, and that's perfect because I don't have to worry about losing the only copy. The original copy is somewhere. So I would say if you want the original copy to survive, maybe keep it with your stuff so that you don't have one family member who loses it for everybody, So that's what I would do, is make a high quality photocopy of it.
I add to that a little bit. So like what I would tell, like, so for like my clients in their estate planning, when I talk about like legacy letters or any of those things, like I always talk about their binder for their estate plan is like the place where everything goes. The place that if you ran out of the house in an emergency, that's what you would take with you. So putting it all there so everyone can find it. And then also even considering like, no, it's not the original, but scanning it and having a digital copy. So like with our clients, like we provide a digital copy of their estate plan and a flash drive and putting it on there so that it doesn't get lost and you have that version of it is something that kind of like I would recommend in those, like with my clients when I talk about those things. So those are some ideas that might help a little bit.
That's a really good idea, Lauren.
I would also say
good
even
handwriting, because you don't
yeah.
want people to be like, what did she, you know, some of those letters from your grandma, you're like, what did she say here?
And I would say too, to scan stuff in, like when Dad did that for you guys, he also went back and wrote a personal note to each of you.
Yes.
And so, you know, just because some of it's scanned doesn't mean it's just a carbon copy, like child number 1, this is yours, child number 2. I mean, like it was personalized. But as far as copying, I would also encourage to send it to yourself and put it in a file where other people have access. Because if you come home and your house is burned to the ground, it doesn't matter if it's on a flash drive. But we have the ability to put it onto an archive. And like, there's so many like Basecamp or whatever where you have files that you're sharing, or Trello, put it in a Trello file for your kids, you know, let them have access to some of those important documents, that being one of them, because that is a true thing that I've had a couple friends where their homes burnt to the ground and it didn't matter what it was saved on. They weren't able to grab anything.
Yeah.
Oh.
There are like some companies out there, like specifically for estate plans and stuff like that, that actually store the documents on hard drives and stuff like that. So there's always, like if you're looking for more secure places or whatever for those things, there are companies that do that.
Yeah. Does anyone else have, thanks for that question, Melissa. Does anyone else have questions? You want to unmute yourself, Mom?
Mute. Okay. I could put my glasses on, I guess. Yeah, but as far as pictures, do you think it would be good to include a few key pictures in with that legacy letter to copy that? You know, maybe.
It's your letter. If you want to add pictures, you can. I think that I try to limit it to the letter because I try to give people something they can do in a weekend. When you start including pictures, like which 5 pictures have you seen in your life are your favorite? You know, that's an undertaking to go and find those and go through all your pictures. And so I do encourage people to go through their pictures and archive them and organize them. And actually the organization that I'm affiliated with, they just partnered with the Association of Professional Photo Organizers. Because those two things are very much related. A picture, I mean, it's true that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but that's only if you know who's in the picture. So that's, you know, knowing who's in the picture and what's happening and why that picture has been saved for generations is, you need actual printed words to explain why the picture is worth 1,000 words. So I try to keep the legacy letter just to written words because we want to get it done. You know, like we want to get it done. If you want to do something bigger, I've done a photo book with Grandma, and I should do a workshop on that because that was fantastic. We just went through a photo album and I recorded her while she was going through photos, and I pulled out the ones that she had stories for, scanned them, transcribed the interview, and put picture with story. And it was just a nice little photo book because I knew almost nothing about Grandma's side of the family. And so that's a really fun, easy, quick thing. I'm trying to give people short wins, short steps that you can be done with all the way. So, so that reminds me that's another thing. When you leave here, and I will send out an email to remind you this, really have a deadline for yourself of when you're going to have this done, because it is work. It's hard work. it's emotional work, and it's easy to put it off. And I promise you, you are giving your family the most precious thing by finishing this, but it is hard to finish. To no surprise. I mean, of the things, when you go through the things that you're proud of, the things I'm proud of section is going to be full of the things that were the hardest things that you did in life. So if this is hard, don't let it surprise you. I'm going to try and make it as easy as I can. And of course, if you need any additional support, please reach out to me and ask, because there really is no higher honor for me than getting a message from someone saying that they finished their legacy letter. It just makes me want to cry, because I know what their family will get from that.
Emma, you prefaced this session with reminding us that our English teacher isn't looking over our shoulder. We're not being critiqued. And then you also said that you've made this template something that we should be able to accomplish in a weekend. So what advice would you give somebody like me, who I just don't feel like I'm a confident writer? I feel like my spoken word is so much more powerful than whatever I can. I'm my own worst critic. And so I think a weekend is a good goal. With that, there are, I think, two questions hopefully that I can articulate is, one, would you encourage us to sit down and write this thing straight through, or sit down and try that and then come back and revise it? And then, like, what is your best practices? Also, the second part of the question is, what are your best practices for getting outside of yourself and getting all of this down on paper?
Well, I will tell you, when I have writer's block, some of my writing practice starts with the words, I am typing on my keyboard, la, 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 la. Whatever gets you started. So if you think about, first of all, it's not final until you say it's final. So sort of removing the fear of, these are the words that my kid will treasure forever. It's not true. So it necessarily, when you're starting, you're just trying to get the words out. I talk about this in my course. There is a mess stage to every creative endeavor. The first stage is the mess stage. And so if Zoom does not kick us out, I am going to actually have a 5-minute free write here at the end, so that we can make a mess. Just make a mess on paper, write all of the stuff as much as you can. And that's the best way to sort of push through. Some people will do it section by section. Some people will write none of what's on the template and just, they already know what they want to say. Some people will revise and revise and revise. However you get it done, it's different for every person, but you do have to embrace the mess phase of it and make a mess and write as inhibited as you can. Whether you need to have some wine, whether you need to have a quiet weekend away where no one's talking to you, wherever you can go deep and live in that space where you can just make a mess with your words. And a lot of people have fear about writing. Writing is just talking in ink, is what I like to say. Like, if imagine that your kid is an adult and he's sitting across the table from you and you're just telling him these things. And if you need to record yourself on your phone, there's the recording app, and then transcribe that to get yourself started. That's a great way to go. A lot of people have insecurity about the way that they write. And I'm just going to say, there's a lot of great writers out there. Those people are competing with other writers. You are competing with no one when it comes to the letter from my mama. That is going to be the most precious thing. He's not going to be like, 4 stars. I'm not sure she articulated
you missed a call.
super well. So, that sense of competition is gone. You're not competing with anyone for how well you've written. It's not a competition. And just if you remember who you're talking to, I think it makes it a little less scary.
I was going to ask something that tied directly into that, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, is, we deal with writer's block as lawyers all the time. And what do you think about the idea of actually dictating where you can either dictate and transcribe later, or even dictate and transcribe right then so that you just go back and edit later so you can kind of just talk, or the other option being like paper to pen, which we've kind of already discussed, because I feel like when you said earlier the idea that
Oops, hang on, Robin, I need you to mute yourself. Here we go. I'm going to mute you.
When you said earlier the idea that like you edit all the time, we're so busy editing, not just like writing. So I feel like sometimes we edit less when it's do you agree that we edit less sometimes when we put paper to pen because you can't edit quite as easily?
I don't know. I've never thought about that before. It is a lot easier to delete, so you're sort of putting yourself in a position where you're stuck with your words. So that's a good point. I definitely don't edit my journal nearly as much as I edit, a blog post. So that's a good point.
Like, that's kind of like some of the tricks, I guess, that we use sometimes is the dictate to transcribe, or like having it transcribed right away and then coming back later and being like, all right, well, that wasn't what I wanted to say, but then I can actually edit it, but you just get it all out, or even just writing it, because like you see, you can cross out, but you can't go back and rewrite a sentence very well on a piece of paper.
Honestly, my own personal hack is, so I write for a magazine. We have an amazing photographer. There have been times when it's 1 o'clock in the morning because I've spent 3 hours trying to get the first sentence out. And I finally just go, you know what? No one's even going to read it. They're going to love the pictures and only look at the pictures. And then I can write. I mean, just saying, like, it doesn't matter what I write. And I mean, it's not true. I'm just going to tell myself, like, April takes the most amazing pictures. People are only going to look at the pictures. This is just background. No one's even going to read it. So even professional writers have to deal with that. And we all find a way to power through it, because in the end, getting the letter done is what's the most important. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. I'm going to stop the video here, and we will do a 5-minute free write and just sort of kick off the mess stage.
I will never forgive myself for stopping that recording where I did. So here's what happened. Here's what happened after I stopped the recording. I never could have predicted this. We spent 5 minutes writing, which I recommend that you do when this video is over. Set the timer for 5 minutes and write whatever comes to mind on your legacy letter. It's a great first burst. So after that, I said, time's up. How did that feel? 3 people were crying. We had the most amazing feedback of people talking about how powerful of an experience it was. One person in particular said, I feel better knowing that if something happened to me today, someone will find this on my dining table and give it to my son. I mean, it was such a powerful and moving experience that I did not predict. And I really wish you had been there. I will do another live workshop in the future. But for now, as you're working through your template, please set yourself a deadline to get your letter done. Please reach out to me if you get stuck, because it is my greatest honor to help people finish their legacy letters. It really is. So if you get stuck, let me know. And if you finish yours, please share with us so that we can celebrate with you, because that is quite an accomplishment. Thank you for joining us for the Legacy Letter Workshop. And again, check out the guided memoir class below.